Today I'd like you to join me as we review and examine opinions and evidence regarding the origin of Arabic script. In this inscription from ancient Syria near Aleppo, a town called Zabad, this inscription is dated to 512 AD, and it shows three different scripts. It shows Greek, it shows Syriac, and it shows on the bottom line, it shows what is believed to be the first Arabic text that can be recognized as such. If you look at the forms of the Arabic text, which we have transcribed here below, it corresponds to this stone layer here. The Arabic text that we see is very angular, very geometric, very simple. But then again, the samples of the Greek and the Syriac in this inscription are also very simple. However, the presence of the three scripts together tells us something about what was happening culturally in that area. It means all three scripts had a presence in some way. Moving forward just a few decades to 568 AD, near Haran, now in southeastern Turkey, we see this inscription, which many believe is readable. There have been interpretations of this writing. We notice that things still look very angular, just a few round shapes. We notice also that there is no dotting absolutely on any of the letters, which is a common characteristic of more modern Arabic. We notice also that some of the letter forms, like this ain and here, which in later Arabic looks like a triangle, here just looks like an open V. Now it's important also to note that this Arabic inscription also appears with a Greek one. Moving forward almost 200 years, we have this inscription found near Jerusalem. It's dated to 692 AD. And we can see that the very simple geometric shapes have already become a bit more sophisticated. The circles are still circles, but they're perfect circles. Some of the very angular forms now have gained some curvature. As we see these early inscriptions, it makes us wonder, how did Arabic appear out of nowhere like this? It just seems to have been born in some developed, maybe primitive form, but how did it really happen? The style we see in this latest inscription is often called Kufic, which would attribute it to a style born in Iraq, in the town of Kufa. However, the three inscriptions we've seen so far have been more in the Levant and not in Mesopotamia. So the style here is more appropriately left unnamed, I think. Let's examine some opinions on Arabic script. In the 9th century, the Arab historian al-Baladuri tells us that three men from the tribe of Tai fashioned Arabic script in a manner like Syriac. Syriac was the script used to write the dialect of Aramaic that was spoken in the Levant or Eastern Mediterranean in the first millennium. We move forward another 10 centuries, 1 millennium. It's 1,000 years later, and we come to modern times as European scholars are discovering the cultures and the artifacts of the Near East. In 1865, Orientalist Theodor Nöldeke published his opinion that Arabic writing descended from Nabataean script. Here we see a representative inscription of Nabataean. What do we know about Nabataean? First of all, that it's alphabetic. It's similar in repertoire, letter repertoire to Hebrew, so around 22 consonants. It's a derivative of Imperial Aramaic, which was used by the Persian empires as official language, as lingua franca. The lines here in the inscription are very clean, they're consistently done. Vertical lines are quite vertical, very, very few irregularities. Moving forward another century to 1966, Semiticist Jean Starkey refuted Nöldecke's assertion of Nabataean origin, and he proposed Syriac script as the more logical source of Arabic. Starkey argued in favor of Syriac because of its structural resemblance with Arabic script. Now here we see the earliest dated Syriac manuscript, dated to 411. It's part of the British Library collection, and it shows already at this stage a very high degree of calligraphic sophistication. I remember my first introduction to Syriac when I saw something printed in it, and I thought it was actually nonsense Arabic that somebody had written. Had the letters had been substituted, but the overall flow looked quite similar. There are older inscriptions, but not manuscripts. So to date, this is the earliest manuscript found. We move forward a few decades to 1993. Beatrix Grindle, a researcher and doctoral student at Harvard, published her doctoral work in which she collected an exhaustive material to demonstrate a natural and gradual transition from Nabataean writing to early Arabic. Here we see a sample of this publication, a typical page where there's an introduction, discussion of different sources and their importance and so on. And then basically four columns of collections of graphemes that have appeared in the various sources she has chosen. Now she did a very precise collection. She had a closed collection that was quite large, and she collected all possible forms from each of these. On this page we see the representations for the letter meme, the M, and we can see starting at the top here and proceeding down how more or less progressed towards rounder shapes, and in the earliest Arabic inscriptions we have a very similar round shape. Now, just a few years later, in 1997, Semitic scholar Francois Shakuni argued very strongly against the primary use of individual glyph shapes to demonstrate the relationship between scripts. She proposed that writing systems need to be compared by their overall look on the page. One must also take into consideration historical and cultural factors such as status and prestige associated with each script. A script must be examined as a whole system, she said, and not as a collection of glyphs. Here we see the two samples, Nabataean on the right and Syriac on the left. We see them side by side and consider the different features. Zwickel points out some important visual differences between Nabataean and Syriac. In terms of alignment, Nabataean characters appear to be suspended from a common horizontal line, with the lower parts of the letters uneven. So, for example, here we see a virtual line at the top here, and at the bottoms of the letters we have extremely different descender levels. On the other hand, if we cross to the Syriac sample, we see that the letters are all sitting on a common baseline, and they are connected also along the level of the baseline. In terms of proportions, the Nabataean letters can be characterized as being taller than wider, while the Syriac letters are primarily wide with a few tall strokes here and there. So we can see here in the Syriac squarish proportions in the different letters, and then a few of the letters are narrow and tall. While in the Nabataean, we see a lot of tall or deep characters in this sense. What do we know about Nabataean culture? You might have seen this picture before associated with Petra in Jordan. At the time Arabic writing appeared, the Nabataean nation whose capital was Petra, had already been destroyed at the hands of the Romans. Consequently, Nabataean writing by the 4th and 5th century no longer had any prestige associated with it, while Syriac literary tradition at that same time was flourishing. So we have these two scripts named Nabataean and Syriac as potential sources. Are there any other scripts to consider? We see a sample here of South Arabian writing, which had been used widely in Arabia, the Levant, and Mesopotamia, and it was originally devised for South Arabian languages, but there were examples of Arabic being written in this script. In fact, its character repertoire is ideal for the Arabic language. Yet, why wasn't it chosen as a script for Arabic? Shakuni says because it was associated with a nomadic society, while the Syriac literature was associated with a city, a metropolitan type of society. We move forward another 4 years to 2001. Beatrix Grindle wrote the section on Arabic script in the new Encyclopedia of the Quran, and in it she states that Arabic writing was most likely influenced by Syriac calligraphy. So her position in a few years had changed a bit from saying that Arabic came purely from Nabataean, and she concedes that it was influenced by Syriac calligraphy. With these opinions in mind, we are left with a new question. Do we have to choose one script over another as a source? Is it possible that features from two different scripts, Nabataean and Syriac in this case, can be mixed to create a new script? If so, is that believable? Are there examples of such invented scripts? Here you see a clay tablet on which you see cuneiform shapes, wedge shapes associated with Babylonian writing, Akkadian and Sumerian primarily. Here we know it represents the Ugaritic language. Now this clay tablet is dated to 1800 BC, to Ugarit, which would be located in northwestern Syria today. This script precedes Phoenician by roughly 800 years. So here we see a collection of letters. And what is most fortunate about the discovery of Ugaritic writing in the early 20th century is that many educational clay tablets were found, and this is one of them. And basically, it lists it's an abecedary, it lists the ABCs for students, and they were interpreted. So here we have the Ugaritic language, was a West Semitic language, has a sound, has a phonetic repertoire very similar to Arabic. And we see that the forms here don't look like any other Semitic alphabet. Basically, someone took cuneiform shapes and fitted them to a Semitic repertoire of sounds. This is a perfect example of feature amalgamation, where somebody took some features from here, some features from there, and created something new. Now let's move on by examining some of the claims of similarity in letter forms between Nabataean and Arabic scripts. The inscription at the bottom is from An-Namara, also would be in southern Syria today. And it's claimed to be an Arabic language set in Nabataean letters. So I'm speaking of this bottom inscription. It's dated to 328 AD, and it's considered an important inscription of Arabic language in Nabataean letters. Let's examine some of the similarities. So one of the main similarities between Nabataean and Arabic is this letter, which is called the Lam Aleph. It's a digraph, basically the sound L followed by A. And we see in the Arabic inscriptions we have from two different periods, we see that form. Then we see the letter L, which is repeated verbatim. Then the letter Ain, which again appears. The letter Jim, or Gimel, also appears to be very, very similar. Then the letter Mim, the M. Now let's move on and visually inspect some of the details of Syriac writing. If we look across the lines here, we see that there are occasional gaps in the connection between letters. Most of the letters within a word are connected, but as here, for example, we see some areas where they are disconnected. Now, here I have the list of all the letters in Syriac writing which only link with their preceding neighbor, but not with the successor. I remember when I was first learning the script and I saw this trait, and in my mind I thought, I've seen this before. Here we have a sample of the Aleph. Here we have a sample of the Dalet or Resh. Here we have the Het, and you can see the disconnection. Here we have the Waw, the Zain, the Tau. Now let's move on to look at an early sample of Arabic and examine some of the similarities. The letter Aleph is written like this in Syriac, and in Arabic it's basically a vertical line, sometimes with a hook at the bottom, sometimes not. We see a sample of the Aleph, also disconnected from the successor letter, an L. We see the letter Dalet, Dal in Arabic, also disconnected from its successor, the Aleph. The Waw, the Re. Oops. So with this noted similarity, when I came across this observation, I thought to myself, why have I not seen any documentation of this? And I can only speculate on that. I think most scholars of Syriac may not be interested in examining the orthography of Arabic, or most people that know the orthography of Arabic don't go examining the orthography of Syriac. So we have 8 right-linking Syriac characters that that don't connect to the left, we have 5 equivalent Arabic letters that reflect the same pattern. Let me ask the question, are there any other scripts that follow this pattern? The only 2 I know of are Mandaic and Manichaean, and both of them are direct derivatives from Syriac. As far as I'm concerned, this parallel behavior is genetically significant, if I could use that word, like a feature of red hair. The inscription we see here is from the northern part of Arabia, and it shows very early forms of Arabic. In conclusion, let me say that although they sometimes appear to be alive, let us keep in mind that writing systems are not biological beings that naturally carry their ancestors' traits or adapt to their surroundings. Instead, they are created by human beings who choose what features they want to make evident. Every change that's introduced is done through a human act. Might there be other scripts that contributed to the formation of the Arabic script? Time will tell. Thank you for your time and attention.
Could you please use the mic?
You mentioned a South Semitic script that was used to render early Arabic that had been associated with a nomadic culture.
Yes.
I missed the name of the script, or does it?
South Arabian, basically.
That's what it's called. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
About the same. I was just curious, how can rock inscriptions be associated with the nomadic culture?
I was quoting
Madame
Shakuni. It's not my personal opinion.
South Arabian wasn't nomadic, because of urban society.
But in Yemen, yes, that's very true. Yes, but in northern, the contact point here is actually the Levant and very far northern Arabia. So the contact point here is not in the south. South Arabian writing and a very similar writing system called North Arabian had the same source, but they were used at different times for different purposes. But it happened that Arabic did not have a writing system at that time, and during that time it was written sometimes in Nabataean, sometimes in South Arabian.
Please put on your mic.
There were much more scripts that just South Arabian and Nabataean and Syriac in
in that area. Oh yes, there were.
Arabic peninsula. You have many different scripts which existed. So
none of these samples were in Arabia except the last one that I showed, which was more than 100+ years older than the original ones. All the early ones are basically in the Levant. So again, there's a school of thought that says the Arabic script originated in Arabia and moved northward.
Yeah.
We've yet to see.
In the whole peninsula.
Yes.
The whole peninsula. So that's not north. It's the northern part. You had many different scripts.
Yes, I'm aware. That's why I left it as an open question.
Yeah.
Are there other scripts that contributed? Time will tell.
Unfortunately, we have still very few publication of those things, but we start to see them since, I think, 20 years now. There are researchers going into the desert, in Syria also, and finding inscriptions on stones. But this is in the desert itself.
What are those additional scripts? Have they been classified?
While the discussion is going on, I
it's
would
been now
ask
20
Mr.
years that I'm not anymore in
Dichy
this
to get
thing,
ready.
but, later we can.
Okay.
Okay. While we have time for 2 more questions, I would like the next presenter, Monsieur Dichy, to get ready. Okay. I think we have time for 2 more questions while he is getting ready, if there are any. Could you please switch off your microphone again? Hit the button again and then it's off. Yes, thank you. That's perfect. Yeah, you go ahead. It's your turn. I think there are no more 2 questions, so you can take this. Thank you very much. That was very interesting.